Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. This is Franz Sidney today with two really special guests all the way from California, and their name is Orna and Matthew Walters, dating coaches, and a lot more. Thank you for coming to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, Franz, it's so nice to meet you and be here with your audience.
Yes, it's a very nice, eager audience that is always listening for tips for every day so we can improve the life that we have and make it just as we want. That's why it's called Create with Franz. Create what you want. And I'm really excited today because I can help you, all you guys who are listening, and you have problems with relationships. You can't really find the right date for you. Even worse, do you ever get stuck in a cycle of bad relationships? Bad relationships. Bad. People who hurt you physically, emotionally, whatever, you name it, financially. People who you thought they were wonderful. Do you know what happens when you look at somebody think they're going to be amazing? And then slowly, the abusive or the narcissist comes out and you realize that what you thought was gold is actually pyrite. It's not quite gold. It's not the same. Looks like it, but it's not. So today, with the help of Orna and Matthew, who have quite a story there to share, we're gonna help you to determine exactly why you're getting there and how to get out of a cycle. So listen on, and we start with you guys. You tell me how you got on. How did you become dating coaches? There must be some good reason for that.
Oh, that's really a great question and a fun story. So, when we met, when we were dating, I had my hypnotherapy practice, and Orna had her practice as a manifestation coach. And we were great networkers. We actually met in a networking group, and we were always meeting people and just looking for reasons to engage with other business owners. And at some point, about 2 years into us, we were engaged. A friend of Orna's that she had met and invited us to speak at this spa in Hollywood that was starting to do personal growth talks. And so we were invited to speak together, which we had never done before.
So our joke is that we do love on purpose, but business by accident because we took the meeting. They offered us an opportunity to speak. We said yes. They gave us a date. Our people call your people. We get down to the car. We looked at each other and said, what are we going to talk about? And we decided that I would share my journey to Matthew and he would share his journey to me. And we called that live workshop that we got to offer at the end of the talk, Creating Love on Purpose. We had no idea we were starting a business together, but it really took off. And here we are almost 2 decades later.
Wow, 2 decades still together. And nowadays, you see that 50% of marriages will end up in divorce. And people always ask, why? What is that I've done wrong here? And sometimes you look at the dating process and how did you go through this dating? So I heard that you wanted to share a story with us. What was that story?
Yeah, we want to share a story of our client, Lindsay. And Lindsay, it's such an interesting story because she came to us. She had been divorced, and the husband she divorced was a narcissist. And then she got engaged. And through her engagement, planning her wedding, she realized, oh no, I'm with another narcissist. And that's when she woke up. She says, I have to do something about this. And that's when she reached out to us.
Yeah, we're known as sort of the pattern identifiers and breakers in our, online. And so she reached out to us, and I find it to be an interesting study because when you have a parent who's a narcissist, it's oftentimes that you end up with a narcissist and then suddenly realize, oh, I have this pattern, and it makes sense why you got attracted and sucked into a narcissistic cycle. However, with Lindsay, it was very interesting because neither of her parents were narcissists. And so we sort of had to do a little bit more digging. What happened in Lindsay's childhood is an example of what we all do in our childhood, because just like we learn to walk and talk in our family of origin, we also learn about love, and we make decisions about ourselves long before we know who we really are or how the world works. And so in learning about love, and there was a lot of love in Lindsay's upbringing. It was her parents, and she had one brother, and her father had this genetic disposition to heart problems. So her entire childhood, her dad would be in the hospital and it would be catastrophic. They were all sitting around on pins and needles, wondering if dad was ever coming home.
Yeah.
Her dad eventually passed away in her 20s. He made it till her mid 20s. But she spent her entire childhood wondering if dad was ever going to come home.
Mm.
And this feeling, this underlying anxiety that came from the constant uncertainty in her life became sort of a GPS for how relationships should feel like to her. And so, if any of you have ever been in a relationship with a narcissist, they're really good at switching things up all the time with you, right? First, they may come on strong and love bomb you, and then suddenly they're very critical. And there's all this push pull, and there's this underlying feeling of anxiety about the relationship. And one of the qualities in both of the men that Lindsay was with where neither one of them supported her career, her business. She's an entrepreneur. She had a very successful business, and they constantly wanted her to give it up so that they could be the primary breadwinner for her. And so there was this other part of sort of a rejection of who she was, combined with this feeling of anxiety because of their constant changing moods that she was dealing with, that triggered in her subconscious mind a recognition that, oh, this feels familiar.
Right.
Right?
And so the brain science of attraction proves that we are attracted to what is familiar to us. And so, as a child growing up, this love imprint is formed from age 0, when you first pop out of the womb, all the way up until about age 8 or 9. If you look at education with children, education changes around age 8, 9. A little kid will memorize things, but they can't analyze. So they're memorizing a mathematical table, right? They're memorizing that 1 + 1 = 2, and 2 + 2 is 4, and 3 + 3 is 6. They're not doing any kind of calculations. Around age 8, 9, the mind shifts. And suddenly now we have the analytical mind in place as a filter between the conscious and the subconscious mind. And so in our book that's out, Getting It Right This Time, we walk the reader through the awareness of what their love imprint is. And so your love imprint is formed in your family of origin. It's made up of your limiting beliefs, your mental emotional patterns, and your behavioral strategies for giving and receiving love. And you have to remember, all of those things are like locked in the vault around age 8, 9, unless you have a traumatic or ecstatic experience. That's how those things get changed in the subconscious accidentally, in a sense, unless you work with a professional to create that change on purpose.
Absolutely. Did you want to add something to that, Matthew?
Well, I mean, so we initially, when we met with Lindsay, we identified her love imprint. And I believe her love imprint was, I can't trust love, right? Which is the story she had in her subconscious mind. And the emotion attached to this belief is fear. And when we have a strong negative emotion attached to a belief system, it becomes like a GPS for us. And, you know, we hear a lot about the law of attraction. You should think positively, you should visualize, you should expect good things to happen. The only way that really works, though, is if there's a strong emotion attached to that belief. However, when it comes to love, a lot of us have these negative experiences, either from childhood or as an adult through our relationships. And we have fear, anger, sadness, hurt, shame, guilt attached to our beliefs around love. And as much as we may try to think and positively about it and say, no, my soulmate is waiting for me. When we have a story, like something like I can't trust love, and we have fear attached to it, it becomes the rudder on your boat, steering you to recreate those kind of situations over and over and over again. And the key is to be able to break those patterns.
Yes. I see this all the time. I have plenty of people that I've met as a hypnotherapist and as friends who literally go from one to the other. It's always the same, it's very familiar. He or she seems to be the perfect match, shining in like how do you say, the armor, the knight in the armor on the white horse, whatever. Everything is perfect. Once they have together this routine and everything, they realize this is just like my dad, this is just like my cousin, this is just like that. I can cope with it. It's okay, I'm not perfect either. They keep going. And then there is a point after a year, after 20, when the person says, enough is enough, but they're stuck in this cycle. And do they want a second divorce? Do they want a third divorce? They think, well, now we have kids, they're going to suffer, or my family is going to criticize me, I'm going to lose my status, because in society, if you get divorced, there's going to be this kind of separation, The married couple, they used to invite you, they no longer invite you because you're single and you can be a danger. So it becomes quite a thing. And some people remain in terrible relationships for years because they think, well, that's all I can have now. And I think we deserve more, but we have to know our worth. Also, we want to work on ourselves if there is something. But if we know how much we are valued and loved, the universe loves us, there are lots of people who are going to appreciate us. But still, why do we allow this to happen? Because it's familiar. The mind loves what is familiar. I remember Marisa Peer, who is one of my trainers in hypnosis, she just said, the mind likes what is familiar and hates what is unfamiliar. And that's why we hate change. So what is your solution?
Well, I mean, it's more than likes, right? I mean, we're drawn to what is familiar. If you've ever walked into a room of 50 to 100 people that you've never met before, you know that there's only a handful of people that sort of pop, like they're highlighted for you. And the majority of people in the room are like extras in your own personal movie. They're kind of gray and in the background. You know they're there, but you're not interested in speaking with them or connecting with them. And likely, if you've ever had this experience, once you start talking with one of those people that's kind of brighter than everyone else, you probably had this experience where you start talking with them and suddenly you have all these things that you have in common. And whether there's an attraction there or it's a love interest or not doesn't matter. The mind highlights what is familiar. Because remember, this space between our ears is the most powerful computer on earth. And it's sifting through millions of bits of information in every moment to guide you to what you know, to what is familiar. Those things pop, those people pop. So the first thing you do to break this cycle is to slow down the dating process. Franz, when we started, you mentioned the dating process, but I bet most people listening don't even think of dating as a process because most people don't want to date. They want to jump in and rush to exclusivity the minute they get that sensation, and that message from the subconscious is so strong, almost yelling at you, this is familiar, this is familiar. Oh, it feels so good to have that instant connection with someone. And what we would say is the first thing you want to do is beware of instant intimacy. Intimacy takes time. Getting to know somebody takes time. When you start reading a book, you don't know the end of the story, right? So you have to let getting to know somebody, you have to let it evolve over time. You have to take the time. And that's part of knowing your value. Part of knowing your own value is to fall in love with yourself first. You don't get love from another person. It's the love you have for yourself that you share with another person. And so part of going through our getting it right this time, we wouldn't call this a dating book. This is a book about deep self-introspection. It's how to heal your heart so that you can come into your next relationship whole and complete, because that is how a healthy relationship functions. You're not looking for a soulmate or a partner or a beloved to complete you. That Jerry Maguire myth from that Tom Cruise movie is a myth because that is a codependent relationship. If you're looking for a healthy relationship, you have to feel whole and complete. Yes, you know that you're not perfect. If you're expecting that you would be perfect, and if you have a perfectionist issue with yourself, that's a judgment that will that will block love from you. Because if you're hard on yourself, you'll be hard on a partner. If you can't please yourself, no partner can please you. So part of the way we start the book is with the awareness of what's truly going on with you, inside of you, so you can heal your own wounds. In a sense, learning how to love yourself so that you can teach someone to love you.
The other piece about slow love is to let dating be an experiment. We always say, put yourself in the dating lab. And when you're in a lab and you're in an experiment, you want as much data as possible in order to come to a really good conclusion about your experiment. However, most people, like Orna said, they don't like to date. They don't want to have a date with somebody they're not attracted to because they don't want to waste their time. However, what you can learn when you go on a lot of dates with a lot of different people and you take your time with those people, you
Mm.
can suddenly begin to identify your own stuff that starts coming up, your judgments, your self-criticisms, your strategies that maybe aren't working for you. What you may notice, and a lot of people see this when they begin to slow off process, is they notice that when they're really attracted to someone, that it's harder for them to be authentic. It's harder for them to just be themselves and stay relaxed and be comfortable in their body. Instead, they go, something in their mind gets triggered and it says, who can I be? How can I behave? What can I say to get you to like me? We call it twisting into a pretzel to get love. And the problem is when you're twisting into a pretzel to get love and you take this weird shape, you can't hold that shape through a whole relationship.
It's exhausting. I'll use myself as an example, actually. I remember we didn't get together until we were both over 40. And when I was, so I was single for a long time. And I remember going out with this guy, I think it was in my early 30s, and he was like a tall drink of water. I mean, he was hot, super hot.
Yeah.
And we went on this date, and when we parted, this was my inner dialogue. You didn't, and you should have, and you could have, and you and my inner critic was lit up. And I remember sitting in my car. I couldn't even start the car and drive away. I was like so shaken up about how horrible I was to myself. I knew I could never go out with that guy again. It didn't matter how hot he was. I thought, well, the person I want to share my life with shouldn't trigger my inner critic. They should trigger a nice inner dialogue with myself. I should feel good about myself when I part from my beloved. And so when you allow dating to be an experiment, like Matthew mentioned, that is part of breaking your pattern. The first part of breaking your pattern is really knowing what's true for you. You know, if you went to the doctor and you asked, well, I've got this rash on my arm and what can we do? And he's like, oh, well, let me run some tests so we can see what it is. And then we can give you a prescription. You don't judge what's happening in the rash. You don't go, well, why do I have this rash that's all red and bumpy? And right, we don't have judgment about it. We just want to know what is and then treat it. And that's what we would say as you go through the process of looking to create change in your love life, judgment is the biggest block. And so when you judge what's going on with you, instead of just looking at it as just facts, like there was an old detective show on from the 60s called Dragnet. And the detective would say, just the facts, ma'am, just give me the facts when he was talking to a witness or something. And that's what we want to say to you. It's like when you know what's true for you, now you're in the driver's seat to create change. And so where we start off the book, which is in 3 sections, the first section is called awareness, because you can't drive the car from any other seat. You can't drive it from the back seat, can't drive it from the passenger seat in the front. You've got to be in the driver's seat to drive the car. However, awareness is like that, right? So awareness gets you in the driver's seat. You haven't gone anywhere yet once you sit in that seat. So the second section of our book is called transformation. And that's where you really start driving the car. And getting in the driver's seat of your love life allows you now to transform the things that you've recognized aren't serving you. And then the third section of the book is called manifestation. So you can actually manifest your beloved partnership.
The mistake a lot of people make is they want to jump to manifestation because that's the fun part, right? That's the part where it's like, wow, I get to envision this relationship and I get to imagine my soulmate. And we all want to get into manifestation. However, if you don't know where you are in this moment, then the journey to where you want to be is clouded. It's not easy. We always use this analogy. You go into that large shopping mall. And when you first get there, you're looking for, say, you're looking for that specialty luggage store with the fancy Toomey luggage, right? And you go up to the map. And on the map, there's a little dot, and the dot says, you are here. And if that dot was rubbed off, you'd have to wander through the mall, hoping that you're going to find the store. And maybe it's hidden in the back somewhere, and you would never find it accidentally. But this is the way people are approaching love. We're wandering around. We have some idea about what we think we want. We certainly know what we don't want. But that's not how you manifest. That's not how you create something in your life. You create because first you go, well, this is where I am. This is where I'm starting. And this is what I need to get past in order to get to where I want to be.
That's a big difference. And I think there is a big rush, especially in certain types of society, to get married quickly because maybe you see via the people of your age, 20 to 30, they're getting married, they're having children, get their degree, and you're like, I'm still a single because my relationship ended, so now I'm single and I'm 28 and I feel very old. So, the biological clock for women, because a man can father up to 80, 90, not a woman. A woman after a certain age, she will feel this, gosh, I'm missing that experience to become a mother. And we have that push as well, also because there isn't just this clock, there is a societal pressure to always look young. When you're 14, 50, you're not allowed to age. I mean, even Brooke Shields, who was one of my favorite models, actresses when I was 15, she just published something called Brooke Shields is not allowed to age.
Oh, I know. Her book launched the same day as ours. So we have the same launch date. But the thing you have to remember that you are the one in charge of how you feel about yourself, right? When you allow somebody else to dictate how you feel about yourself, you're in trouble. And so, we are obsessed with youth. We live in a youth obsessed society. But the reality is because we live in a consumer-based society. And so if you look at all of the products that are sold and pushed on us to hold on to something we literally can't hold on to, which is this idea of youth. And I think this is a bigger conversation, not just about dating and relationships, but how we are obsessed with consumerism and buying stuff. I mean, why do women's, shoe heels get skinny and fat and our jeans get skinny and boot cut, skinny cut, you know what I mean? We're constantly changing. So we buy the next new thing. I just hold on to my jeans and I always have something that's in style. So
Exactly.
the reality is that is a fleeting thing. And so we would say that if you're looking for a life partner, you have to have some life experience. And there isn't a need to rush. I remember when we got engaged, we got married at our spiritual center. And when we decided to get married there, they only perform weddings on Saturdays and only a few Saturdays out of the year. And when we got the selection of dates available, we ended up selecting a date that was a year and a half out from our engagement. And I thought at the time, wow, that's a really long time to wait to get married. And then the other side of me was like, oh, well, if we're spending the rest of our lives together, it's going to end up like a blip. And I can tell you after all these years later, that engagement did go by like in the blink of an eye. As a matter of fact, I remembered thinking that it was actually really nice to have that time, right? Because there are 5 stages of relationship and most people only know the first 2, right? Most people are familiar with that romance phase, right? That sense of falling in love. We don't even have any other language for it in English, right? And I wonder if that's true in all languages, right? Do we always say fall in love? Like we always slipped in a banana peel, right?
Not in
And
Italian.
accidentally landed on the other person. There's no other way to say, oh, I met Matthew and I chose to love him. You would look at me like, well, that's weird, right? But love is a choice. Love is a verb and it's a choice as well, right? When we choose to really love somebody. But most people date backwards. They are giving a stranger the benefit of the doubt based on something as fickle as a feeling, right? And unfortunately, a lot of married couples know this experience where they've earned the benefit of the doubt that they're not given, right? It's like we end up being stingy almost with our love over time. It's like we hold somebody to an unrealistic expectation, right? Somebody you've chosen to get married to and share your life with gets the right to have a bad day or to slip up or to mess up or to, we're going to have these things. It's this ideal when we make love a fantasy. When we're attached to a fantasy of what sharing your life with an ideal partner is, we're in trouble because nobody can live up to a fantasy. I think at some point, every single one of our clients asks us, do you guys fight? And we're like, yes, of course we do. And they're like, well, what does it sound like? And I said, well, it sounds like a fight. But that's not the right question. It's really, what do we do with the fight? And this is actually in the manifestation section of our book as well, and getting it right this time. We show how the actual steps to repair and reconnect after you disconnect and have a disagreement. And so, really learning how to do that is a life skill. There's a skill set for lasting love. And most people say, oh my gosh, that sounds like a lot of work. Well, you know what? It takes a lot of work to share your life with somebody. You wouldn't expect to read a book on weight loss and suddenly the next morning you've lost 20 pounds. Or you wouldn't expect that when you have a career choice that suddenly you're just going to magically, if it was meant to be, that you would have the skills to function in that career, right? We're taught from the moment we pop out of the womb that everything we want in life, that we should get educated, have a skill set, and oh my gosh, practice, 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 accept love. So if you want to practice how to do love so you can create a healthy relationship, all of those exercises are right here in Getting It Right This Time. So you can learn to love yourself, practice, practice, practice through the dating process. So no date is ever a waste. You don't have to have dating burnout because you're not riding that hope to disappointment roller coaster. And then you're in a position to date with intention and select a beloved life partner that's going to stick with you, and you can share your life together, because quite frankly, there's so many benefits to sharing your life with an ideal partner, not sharing your life with anyone, right? Sharing your life with an ideal partner. There's health benefits, there are financial benefits. There are so many benefits when you choose wisely. So take your time. You wouldn't just take the first job interview. You wouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, go, oh my gosh, I know this is the job that's meant for me, and not, send your resume around. You wouldn't just dream and hope that the right career path lands in your lap. So let's stop love by accident. Let's really have a conversation around love on purpose and intentional dating, because breaking that cycle, whatever cycle you're in, whether it's toxic or unhealthy or abusive, that's not the problem. A lot of people come to us because they're simply stuck. Maybe they're not even sure what love is. Maybe they think they've never even been in love. They don't know how to pick a partner. So everybody comes to this work with from a different starting place. It doesn't matter where you're starting from. We want to walk you through this intentional process so that you can really create that soul satisfying and that long lasting love that will feel magical when it happens. But remember, magic is not a plan.
Very good. Magic is not a plan. And I think this is a bit of us watching TV shows of all sorts, maybe listening on the Instagram little videos and watching these perfect people and assuming that, like in a Hallmark movie, people meet and then they fix all their issues in this half an hour, and then they're gonna get married, and you're like, oh, that's it. It's like Cinderella's story. But actually, the problem starts after you are married, because you haven't. I mean, who is this woman? The crazy, was it Cinderella's? Was it Snow White? That they just kiss and that's the end.
Right.
Everything is gonna be perfect. And so there is this thing, maybe in teenagers, that he kissed me and I felt like wee up and down and amazing, wonderful. That's good for a crush. But then when you have to live in the same house, under the same roof, day after day, and this person is totally different, with totally different habits, patterns, things that we do, the value are different. Your life is gonna be like walking on hot potatoes. You can't do anything. So you're gonna be angry and resentful. So if you don't jump into this relationship hoping for this thing that doesn't exist, because it doesn't exist. You cannot just meet somebody, I mean, very rare, once, twice, and then, yeah, that's for life. You have to give time for the person, because it usually takes 9 to 12 months to really see a bit more of a person.
And the thing is, what's
Yeah.
happening in that 9 to 12 months is really fascinating, because if you're quote unquote falling in love with that person through that time period, your brain is being flooded with chemicals that have been likened to like using heroin. You are literally high on oxytocin. You're high on serotonin. You're high on all these drugs that are creating this feeling of euphoria, that are creating a feeling of bonding, all these different chemicals that the brain has. Now, unfortunately, we cannot live the rest of our lives high on love. It's just not the way it works. Eventually, those chemicals wear off. And then we're stuck with this person
Who's not like us.
who's not like us, who's like, as you said, a very different person. And suddenly those things that were so cute or charming or attractive suddenly become annoying. They become frustrating. And we fall into, and Orna hinted at this earlier, we fall into the second stage of relationship, which is the power struggle stage.
Which is literally a tug of war.
It's a tug of war. And we always
You
say
know?
this way, no couple skips the power struggle.
No one does.
Some couples, it's a cold war because they just don't talk about conflict. And so it simmers and creates a gulf between them. And when they get divorced 15 years later, they say, oh, we just grew apart. We became different people. And it's because they didn't talk about their differences. They tried to sweep them under the rug or ignore them. However, some other couples, they blow up. There's all these, there's like volcanoes going off all the time because they're passionate and they can't not talk about their differences, but they don't have the skills about how to communicate when they're triggered. And so those explosions, and maybe they make up by, once again, passionately having sex, but they don't ever resolve the issue.
They don't do a real repair.
They don't do a real repair. And so there's landmines everywhere in their relationship that they're constantly stepping on. And this is the key, is to understand that the power struggle is normal. It is what all relationships go through. And it is there so that you can differentiate. You can regain your individuality. Because during the romance phase, on some level, you kind of merged with that other person. And the two of you became one, as we always talk about. But you can't live the rest of your life as a single unit of two people.
No.
Because you have an individual experience. And you need to be able to express that.
Yeah.
I mean, we get high on love for species survival, right? It's procreation. That's the science behind why that romance stage is so intoxicating, right? So that so that we'll procreate, right? We'll have sex, make babies, and the species will continue to survive. So it's built into species survival that we go sort of numb into this, love is blind. That's where that love is blind, concept comes from. We are blinded by love to this chemical intoxication that occurs. And when it wears off, people think, oh, you must not be my person. And it's tragic, right? Because if you've chosen wisely, right, there are 4 tenets that that must be present. All 4, not 3 of 4, not 2 of 4, all 4 need to be there. So there needs to be chemistry, that attraction, right? The desire to want to be intimate and with that person. The second tenet is that you have shared values. This one is so important, and it's the one that really takes time, right? All the dating coaches in the world say date with slow love, right? Move slowly, because you don't know what somebody values by talking with them. Can you imagine if I asked you right now, Franz, do you value honesty? What are you going to say? Right? Nobody's going to say, no, I don't value honesty. I just lied to you 3 minutes
Just
ago.
one lies.
Yeah, no one's going to say that. No one's going to cop to it. And I don't care how many deep, meaningful conversations. That's not the way to find out what somebody values. You find out what somebody values by spending quality time with them to see how they spend their resources, their time, their money, and their energy. Those are our most valuable resources, and where people spend their resources, you can see and then extrapolate what they value. Now, you're not going to be a 100% match, a values match with someone else, but you need to be a majority match for love to last. You want to say the other two?
Yeah, the second or the third thing you need is you need compatible lifestyles. If one of you is an adventure seeker and the other is a couch potato, you're never going to spend time together, right? You have to have, shared ideas about how you want to live your life. And then the last one, and this is important because this is the one that really requires developing new skills, is you need healthy communication.
Both people need to have those communication skills.
You need to be able to, we always say it this way. We can talk about anything in our relationship. However, we don't have to talk about everything. And it's knowing that difference, that distinction between what we do actually need to talk about and how we need to talk about it using I language as opposed to you language, right? In a way that's respectful, that talks about our own experience and takes responsibility for our own reactions instead of being in blame or attack on our partner.
That's great.
We could talk for hours about this. So
I know, but yeah. Wow. So that was great. There was a lot of stuff, lots of information, which I think is going to be so useful that people will want to check you out to see what else is there for them. So let's remind them again. The book is called Getting It Right This Time and it's been launched today. So go and get it, whatever that is. I don't know if it's going to be all over the place, Amazon, whatever.
anywhere you can buy a book,
Google
you'll be able to
it.
find our book.
Yeah,
Through
there will
your
be a book.
favorite retailer, everywhere books are sold, and it's available as a hardcover book, it's available as an ebook, and also an audiobook. So wherever you buy your books, whatever your favorite retailer, a lot of people like to go to their favorite indie bookstore because they're coming scarce. So you can certainly find, and I'll tell you this, if you go to your neighborhood bookstore and they do not have it, just ask them to order it. We are with a division of Penguin Random House, so any bookstore can order our book.
That's wonderful. I'm sure that if anyone wants to contact you, we're going to put all the details so people can read where about your website, what you're doing, and maybe you might have a retreat or something. But I'm sure there are so many couples nowadays that are breaking because they didn't observe these four pillars. I call those the four pillars. You had to have the attraction, you had to have a common value, you had to have at least one interest, and you had to have those honesty and character capabilities that you can cope with conflict and communicate clearly. And without those, no relationship is going to last very long. Not with peace anyway. We're going to have a lot of trouble. So why not listen now instead of jumping into marriage or living together with a person and then after a few months you're like, oh my gosh, you are back again with the same problem. So let's fix it. And let's share with all your friends this episode because, maybe somebody just needs a little bit of advice so they can tweak their life and really create those wonderful relationships. So thank you so much for being here, Orna and Matthew Walters. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So great
Thank
to be
you,
here.
Franz. It was such a pleasure to be here with Create with Franz. I love that we both have Create in our business name. We're creating love on purpose, and you're Create with Franz. So here we are creating, and that's really our mission to change the world with love.
Love it. Perfect ending. So, guys, I'll thank you so much and I'll see you all next week. Bye bye.